Well, today's program, pioneers of Panola County who were boosters of the county.
True. Um, I thought of some of the older citizens who hear this on Thursday morning, especially Mary Liz Martin told me she's going to be listening this morning. And as I went over these names, I thought, now she's going to know all these. And this will bring back memories for her. Not
Very
just for
good.
her, but for a lot of other people,
Very
too.
good.
The early correspondence to the newspapers and magazines are just delightful to follow. You see, those first newspapers didn't have much news. The front page, it was always totally advertising and politics and that sort of thing. And then there'd be little items of news through it. And a welcome thing was a letter from a community leader, you know, somebody that wrote in how good they were doing in such and such an area and what good crops they had this year and so on. And so some of these men were regular correspondents of Panola County newspapers, the Panola County Register that Miss Margie Neal published, and then came the Panola Watchman had letters from correspondents in the various communities. And then the weekly farm news was a sound-off for farmers, and they were always boosting farming in Panola County. It was just the best, they said, in the whole state and nation. And one of those community boosters called himself Zephaniah, and he wrote his items or articles and signed them Zephaniah. It took me a while to find out who Zephaniah was, and it was Mr. Priest, who was a surveyor. And he was well known in his day, and everybody knew who was writing it. But he didn't put his name on it. He put Zephaniah. But he commented on everything and was a pretty wise guy. I would call these men sages, really. They were men of wisdom who gave advice and who reported what was happening, and it was just a general mixture. But most of all, they lauded this section as being the choice spot of the world. And I pretty well agree with them for that matter, but it's interesting, they acted or served very much like chambers of commerce do today, because their letters back to relatives in Alabama and Georgia brought more settlers to Tennessee, and they kept coming, especially just after the Civil War. Times were so hard where the northern armies had gone through, you know, and burned and wrecked everything. Texas was pretty lucky, though it was terrible here when you read about the Reconstruction period. We were lucky in that not much was burned out. We weren't really occupied by the troops. So this was a choice area, and settlement built up real fast right on the eastern side. And these people that liked where they lived, now most of these that we're talking about today were natives here. Their ancestors came, and then they were born and reared here. But they really thought this was the choice spot, and anybody that was coming that didn't stop here just didn't have good judgment. So Zephaniah was one of those. And his reports were varied. Sometimes they were very serious, and sometimes they were just fun things. And one column especially that I thoroughly enjoyed, and I go back and read ever so often, he wrote it in rhyme. And he used the names of, in that one column, of more than 40 families in this county. And their families you'd recognize. I thought I might read a few of the lines because it was a rather long column. For instance, it says, when it comes to meeting people who are people true, old Panola's in the swim, boys, for such people are not few. Look around you, there are many such, as old Tobe Jernigan, and his wife and noble children, also Dr. Flanagan. And then he goes on to say, good John Rooks, well, there's a Rooks Cemetery out at DeBerry, good John Rooks and Charlie Knight, too, Lon Esco and all his gab, and Dulaney and old Sorrell, watching Esco like a crab, Gus and Arthur Alexander, old John Cockrell and his crowd, Westmoreland and old Judge Boulware, Vandergriff and Johnny Stroud. Just think of how many he's put in and made them rhyme. Judge Tom Hull, Columbus Johnson, Vincent Bakers and Lagrones, old Bob Jernigan and Miss Beulah, John McCormick and Will Jones, H.N. Nelson and Frank Lawson, Brooke and Woolworth and Judge Long, W.R. Anderson, B. Baker, and Jack Brooke, who are among the best lawyers, for they're true men whom we respect and love, men who in their legal calling occupy high plans above. They, in other words, they were not thinking of their own good, but they were honest lawyers. When people usually talk about lawyers, you know. All such men make old Panola. We could name so many more. When it comes to first-class people, Panola has them by the score. Among the Texas statesmen, that's people serving Texas state offices, O.P. Carswell, J. Ras Jones, Jasper Collins with his bride, and Judge Boren, so well known, the man who licked Judge Long and me. They all three ran for county judge, and Judge Boren beat them in the race for county judge and sent our frail barks out to sea. And then there's Wootons, Page, and Williamson, Walls, Walkers, and Willie Hill, Squire Tom Anderson, Jim Forsyth, that's the longtime sheriff, you see, and our doctors and their pills, and he names the doctors, Daniels, Perkins, Neal, and Comer, Wall, Harnsberger, and Frank Hull. Frank Hull is Miss Tiller's father rather. And Panola owns the whole bunch. Such men, our county's full. In other words, they're just all the men in this county, the businessmen, the public men, are just great champions. That's his idea. Stay back here, you know. Then don't hunt the western land, boys. Don't chase phantoms all through life. Stay back here in old Panola. Buy a home and get a wife. Love your wife and make home happy. Don't be dragging her out west. Old Panola beats the world, boys. Beats the whole push. Best the best. Now, this is what I call Panola County Booster. And he was just one of the ones. I ran across one of his serious concourse. This is his humor thing. But he was a great friend of Mr. John L. Williams that was Carrie Tiller Williams's grandfather. And this Mr. John L. Williams was a great champion of Panola County also. And of course, he lived over on the north side of the county, over past Beckville, where Williamses still live, over in there, and at Harris Chapel area. Mm-hmm. And Mr. John L. Williams served in 3 wars, was taken prisoner in each one, and lived to tell about it. And did he tell about it? He had stories in the papers. He had letters he wrote to them. I do hope those letters are in safe hands now. Carrie Tiller shared them with me many times, and I never asked her to turn them over to us, but we didn't have a library, you see, before her death. And I hope we'll get a chance sometime to make copies of them at least, because they're so interesting. He tells about his experiences in the Texas Revolution in some of the letters, dated way back in the middle of the 1800s, you see. He tells about, in some of them, his experiences in the war with Mexico after Texas became a state in the Union. We had to fight again with Mexico. And then he was a Civil War veteran and prisoner, and he tells about that. Well, he was a long-time friend of Zephaniah, or Mr. Priest, and he lived to be 92 years old. In fact, we're indebted to Mr. John L. Williams for having saved this item in his mementos, and Carrie Tiller shared it with me, this that I've just read from. Mm-hmm. But Mr. Priest, or Zephaniah, wrote a tribute to Mr. John L. Williams, who died at 92. And just one paragraph of a few sentences will show that he had real concern for his friends. Let's see, it says, in the 92nd year of his age, he is no more, for God has taken him. He lived the life of the righteous and claimed the promise which was given him. His life was worth its living, and the world, and especially his immediate neighborhood, is the better that he lived and moved and had his being among men. This was his tribute to Mr. John L. Williams, who was his lifetime friend. Then moving to other boosters of the county, there was one of the uncles of the LaGrone family. Well, he lived here too and reared a big family. This is Hiram LaGrone, called Uncle Hi, H.C. LaGrone. He was the oldest of a large family, and the only one in the family that was old enough to go to the Civil War. He was not old enough, really, at first to be drafted, because he was just 16 and they drafted him at 18. But his father was in the age, and rather than for his father, Andrew Jackson LaGrone, to go to the war, Hi went in his place. This was allowed. Mm-hmm. And then when Hi reached 18, the war was still on, and his daddy had to go anyway. This is the way they handled it. You know, this is the way they required it. And so he and his father both were in the war, and just the mother and the younger children at home. But he was a booster of this county, and he died after Grady and I married. So I knew him, mm-hmm. and he was a wise old man. And he wrote to the Semi-Weekly Farm News about Panola County in East Texas, finest land in the world, he said. And in 1920, he wrote these lines, and I think this is real interesting now, 19 and 20. Well, he was old enough to go to he was 16 years old when the Civil War started. And I don't recall exactly the date that he was born, but that would make him be born in the late 1840s. Okay, he says, in 1920 now, he said, the house I was born in is still standing and is the oldest between the Louisiana state line and the Rocky Mountains. And he says, I still live there, on the place where my family lived. I am nearly 73 years old and am the oldest man in Panola County living on the home place he was born on. I don't owe $1. Now that was pretty good in 1920. I don't owe $1. I have owned sawmills and gins and was a merchant. He ran a store for 17 years. I raised and educated 14 children of my own, and he helped a lot of others. 3 of my sons are preachers, and this is true. They preached in the Methodist Church. Some of them in the middle part of the United States, but Don, I remember, was in the Oklahoma Conference. And then Grady's dad, my father-in-law, was his nephew, and he was also a preacher. So he says, I have had experiences in this county to know that this is the finest land in the world. He gives advice at a later time. I have somewhere, here's where he wrote, I wish to say that in soil, climate, wood, water, and in fact everything that's required to make a delightful home, we have it all right here. Now you couldn't get a group together to go anywhere and brag on it more than he was one that did. I have been in 13 states, and that's quite a bit of traveling in that day, and have looked over 175 counties of this state for a better home. Always searching for a better home than Panola County. But nowhere have I found one that would make a better living for my family with as little effort as Panola County. I have bought only 8 bushels of corn in 42 years. All that time I have grown plenty on my own farm. I have kept cotton as long as 7 years. He'd hold it for a better price.
Mm-hmm.
I find that vegetables and fruits can be grown in abundance at all times. Well, now, not everybody would say that, but there is fine fruit grown in this county still. 200 gallons of ribbon cane syrup per acre can be easily grown. Every family had its ribbon cane patch. Panola County has the very best water, the best pastures, the best cattle, hogs, goats, and horses. They all do well on the range here. This was before closed pastures. They just grazed open pastures. Children can be, children can be given a fairly good education in our free schools. Of course, we wouldn't call it a good education today, but they did have rural schools in all the communities. Deadwood, of course, he had to finally bring that in. Deadwood, which is in the richest section of the county east of the Sabine River, has Methodist and Baptist churches, Sabbath schools, and a prayer meeting that has not gone into winter quarters in 14 years. What a way to say it. Never have closed up in the winter.
In the winter.
In the winter. They've gone right on with their church meetings. Deadwood has no bootleggers now.
Or at the present day.
Yeah, right now. So these kinds of things are just so interesting and delightful to know that these people wanted the world to know that this is it, that there's just not any other place to be chosen to equal it. One other that I mentioned here is John Sharp at Beckville, and he had the same kind of attitude. Beckville area of Panola County is the greatest. The farms are the greatest, and of course Beckville got the railroad early, and they could ship their grain or cotton or whatever by train, and that was a real boost. The railroad finally came to Carthage, but it was at Beckville before it was to Carthage, you see, coming down from Longview. So he was also one of our boosters. And then there were others that were eager. I'm trying to watch
We got about 3 minutes.
Well, there were others that were eager to let the world know, stop here, this is it. In reference to that, probably the reason I got on this was I met the new Dr. Smith yesterday. And I told him most of you were my children. But I said, I'm very interested in this hospital. And I'm especially interested in the trauma center part of it because I am a clumsy person. And I have twice had to have my head so stitched up from falls. And I said, I want this thing to be ready when I get another fall. And I said, we have the finest country, finest town. I wouldn't go anywhere else to live. I've lived in this county all my life, and I wouldn't want to live anywhere else. But I want the best for us.
Right.
And this is what these people have wanted.
You know, it's amazing. We go back in history and see those dates and times and those people talking about Panola County. And
they felt the way we do.
They really do. They really do.
And it's worth feeling that way about it.
You bet.
Because I have been fortunate enough to travel in a good many countries of the world. And I love to go, but I sure love to come home.
We might need to point out to the people that don't know about the new Dr. Smith that you referred
Yes.
to, that was a doctor that was looking at
looking over the opportunities
to come into the emergency room area at the hospital.
And since I might fall on my head again, I sure want that to be right.
But we don't want our present Dr. Smith to be in panic.
No. This is a new young man, and he would be in charge of the emergency if he's employed. And he looked me over and he said, well, look like they did a pretty good job on you. I don't see that you're very scarred up from it. But I said, well, I want it done well the next time.
Yes, check it out very well so the next time it's the same. Thank you very much for being with us today. And we always enjoy each Thursday and the program which you bring. And it's always quite interesting. And
Well, it's nice for us to know that we didn't have it like this accidentally. Somebody else cared before we were here.
and thank goodness that they did.
Yes, right.
Thank you very kindly. I hope
Thank
that you
you.
have a good weekend.